Good morning. I would like to welcome everyone present here today and Commission members who are joining us virtually to the first meeting of the Commission to study the Division of Rehabilitative Services. My name is Sylvia Lawson, and I am the Deputy Superintendent for Organizational Effectiveness here at MSDE. I will present information to the Commission today along with Mr. Scott Dennis. Mr. Dennis is the Assistant Superintendent for the Division of Rehabilitation Services. Before we begin our presentation, we would like to share some information with you and provide you with some general reminders as well. This meeting is being recorded. Please do not forget to sign in. The sign-in sheet is on the table by the door. Light refreshments are available in the caucus room, which is immediately out this door and located directly outside of this room. When you go into the caucus room, there are some light refreshments. We have put refreshments on the counter, but if you look to your left, you will also see a refrigerator, and there you can find something cold to drink. A web page has been set up to share information about the Commission. Today's presentation will be uploaded to the web page immediately following the meeting. Before we begin today, though, I would like to give Commission members here an opportunity to introduce yourselves, and then I will give our Commission members who are joining us virtual the same opportunity, and if you could just let us know something about yourself. We will begin with Ms. McKenzie.
Hi. Oh, sorry.
We cannot hear.
Good morning. My name is Laura McKenzie. I am the non-public representative. I am a transition consultant for MANSEF, and I'm very happy to be here this morning.
I'm James Evans. I'm with Division of Rehab Services. I work at the Workforce Technology Center as a program manager.
Hi, my name is Andrew Berlin. I'm the head special education teacher at the High Road School of Hartford County. I'm here representing SESI schools, the non-public schools.
Good morning. My name is Marlo Lemon. I am the Director of Training at the Parents Place of Maryland, also the mom of 2 transitioning age youth.
Do you have to push it?
Oh, thank you. Good morning. I'm Renee Averett-Sanzoni. I am the Executive Director of the Parents Place of Maryland, which is the federally designated Parent Training Information Center and the federally designated Family-to-Family Health Information Center. And I am also the proud mom of 2 young ladies with adults who are transition success stories.
Good morning. I'm Rachel London. I'm the Executive Director of the Maryland Developmental Disabilities Council.
I'm Jade Gingrich. I am Director of Employment and Transition Policy for the Maryland Department of Disabilities. I'm also the mom of a high school student with a 504 plan who is a minority.
Good morning. I am Eugene Chunqui, and I am the Secondary Transition Lead here at Maryland State Department of Education.
And now I will recognize those Commission members who will be joining us virtually. Is April Adams on the line? Ellen Caligari.
Good morning. I'm Ellen Caligari. I've been an attorney since 1978. I was an assistant attorney general for 10 years and actually represented what was then called the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene and interacted with DORS back then. I'm an attorney in private practice and represent children and adults with disabilities throughout Maryland. And I am also a family member of multiple family members with disabilities, including autism spectrum disorders, emotional disabilities, and learning disabilities. And it's such a great honor to be with each of you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Doreen Berrios.
Hi, Hi, I'm Doreen Barrios. I'm the assistant principal at the Maryland School for the Blind.
Thank you. Rihanna Miller.
Good morning. My name is Rihanna Miller. I'm with Appalachian Crossroads, a provider agency in Garrett County. And I'm the director of day and vocational services.
Welcome. Katie Gandy.
Good morning. I'm Katie Gandy. I'm the state coordinator for autism strategy out of the Governor's Office of Community Initiatives.
Sarah Ray.
Hi, I'm Sarah Ray. I'm a special education teacher and a project search instructor, which is a transition to work program that is partners with DORS. I'm in Ocean City, Maryland, and I'm a mom of a 4-month-old who's just coming off of maternity leave.
Welcome. It's dedication. Thank you so much for joining us. Did I get everyone? Did I miss anyone? At this time, before we begin the meeting, I would like to give Mr. Elliott Schoen, who is a lead attorney here at MSDE, an opportunity to give us some information.
Good morning, Commission. As Dr. Lawson said, I'm Elliott Schoen. I'm one of the attorneys that represents the Maryland State Department of Education, and I've also been the legal counsel to DORS for many years. The reason I asked to speak for a moment is just to say a couple of words about the Open Meetings Act. If those of you who have been on other state boards before and commissions are probably familiar with the basics of the Open Meetings Act, but you all were created by a state statute that makes you a public body and subject to Maryland's Open Meetings Act, primarily meaning that before any time that you meet as a quorum, meaning that there have been 23 of you appointed by the state superintendent, anytime 12 of you get together, it is considered a meeting under the law. And in order to hold a meeting under the law, it has to be done with notice to the public, an agenda posted, minutes have to be taken, or in this case, you're recording the meeting, so that can take the place of written minutes, and decisions can be made anytime you have a quorum. So you cannot meet together in groups of 12 to discuss policy. If you're going out to lunch or dinner and you're going to be talking about social things or new babies or et cetera, that is fine, but you have to be very careful. And meeting could even take place over the internet and through emails and in chats. So we strongly recommend that as emails go out, they're going to be going out as notices to everyone, but you do not engage in policy discussions or any type of group discussions through your emails, because it can fall into a meeting which was not noticed. And if, and the public is entitled to hear what you all are, or since you're broadcasting, to see what you are doing, what you are talking about. So we don't want any type of policy discussions with a quorum of the group to be going on without the public having the opportunity to see or particularly to hear. And the biggest issue comes up, as I mentioned before, is emails, because people forget it's so easy to reply all. So we strongly encourage not to reply all. Communication will generally come from MSDE staff, things that they want you to know, and you can communicate back to MSDE staff so that they can communicate information, or over the next several meetings that you're going to have, hold your thoughts and bring them here so they can be discussed publicly. Now, if there are certain matters under law that can be discussed outside of the public, there's a whole process for that. It's unlikely that you all will be going into executive session, but you might. And if there is, Dr. Lawson knows how to contact me. Scott knows how to contact me to go through the process so that you can meet in a closed session without the public being present. Any thoughts or questions? This is just a broad general overview of open meetings, but it's better to get this out there now before I have to come back and say, please stop emailing, which I often do regularly. So any questions or thoughts? Great. So otherwise, I'm going to excuse myself and go back to the back corner and let you all continue to do your work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that information. The presentation today is designed to provide information about the mandates of the Commission an in-depth overview of the Division of Rehabilitation Services and includes information about disability determination services, pre-employment transition services, and the vocational rehabilitation program. Equally important will be a review of the order of selection process, which includes Maryland's order of selection and a national order of selection overview. In addition, factors influencing the wait list and challenges of the Division of Rehabilitation Services, along with solutions that have already been implemented, will be discussed. As a commission member, you will play an important role through sharing your thoughts and recommendations. Your input will be invaluable, and each commission member will be provided with an opportunity to provide feedback, ideas, and suggestions. Already this morning, you may have known a little bit about House Bill 660, but I will provide you with additional information about that. The General Assembly passed House Bill 660 in 2022. The bill requires the creation of a commission to study the Division of Rehabilitation Services and make recommendation on 10 specific topics. Additionally, the commission is tasked to submit a report to the General Assembly and the governor. The interim report is due by December 15th, 2022, and the final report is due by March 15th, 2023. As previously stated, there are 10 required topics that we will be reviewing with you during each meeting and discussing basic information, and then we will go in depth on some information. Slide number 5 provides these 10 topics. I am not going to read the information verbatim, but as I have said before, the presentation will be uploaded to our website. Today, out of the 10 topics, we're going to focus on 4. Methods for improving stakeholder input on the Division of Rehabilitation Services, programs, and services. Methods for improving public-private partner relationships to assist more Division of Rehabilitation Service clients. The third thing that we will review will be whether the eligibility criteria for the Division of Rehabilitation Services programs and services should be altered. And finally, whether there are specific budgetary requests that could support job training programs provided by the Division of Rehabilitation Services. So, at this time, I would like to turn the program over to Mr. Scott Dennis. Mr. Dennis.
Okay, come on. Oh, there it goes. Good morning, everybody. And again, I want to thank each and every one of you taking time out of your very busy and hectic schedules to participate in this very important commission in the review of the Division of Rehabilitation Services. My name is Scott Dennis. I'm the Assistant State Superintendent for the Division of Rehabilitation Services. I have been with the division for over 32 years, and so I have hopefully will provide you a lot of insight and background information with. In addition, I have Ms. Jody Boone, who's the Director of Office of Field Services for the vocational program. The Division of Rehabilitation Services operates a number of important programs throughout the state of Maryland. We operate 2 major programs, disability programs. One is the Disability Determination Services. The second is the Public Vocational Rehabilitation Program. In addition to those 2 major programs, we also operate several smaller programs within the division. The Business Enterprise Program for the Blind. This is a program that operates businesses on federal, state, and private properties across the state. They operate in, the size of these businesses can be from small, what we call micro markets. If you've ever been through BWI, you've seen this sort of the one-person small businesses set up along the concourse there, all the way up to troop feeding. We provide the troop feeding at Fort Meade and at Joint Andrews Air Force Base. So it is quite an operation. In addition to that, we operate the independent living programs around the state. We provide funding for the Centers for Independent Living, as well as providing those centers with funding to provide assistive technologies, assistance to individuals so they can live, continue to live independently in their homes in the state. In addition to that, we also operate the Independent Living Older Blind. This is for individuals who are 55 and older, who have gone blind but still want to live at home and still be independent while living at home. We also operate the supported employment programs. This is broken into two programs, one for youth, which is individuals 24 and younger. The other is the adult, so they're the 25 and older group. This provides job coaching for individuals who have been placed in employment and are seeking to continue that employment once they're placed. And finally, we operate the Client Assistance Program. That's an independent client advocacy program that we receive funding for, and we provide that funding to that program. Kind of give you again a high-level overview of the division itself. Our source of funding. The vast majority of the funding comes from the Rehab Services Administration, which provides our federal basic support funding. The other major source of federal funding is from the Social Security Administration for the operation of the Disability Determination Services. The rest of the other part, large part, is our state funding. This primarily goes towards funding the match requirements and maintenance of effort requirements for the basic support grant. We'll get into that detail a little bit later in the presentation. And then we also get federal funding for some of the other programs that we've already mentioned. Here's how the money is allocated between the various programs. The vast majority of our funding goes for our Office of Field Services. The next largest piece of the pie is our Disability Determination Services. Then the Office of Blindness and Vision Services and our Workforce and Technology Center. Overall, 87% of our federal funding, and all of our funding, goes for direct client services, whether it be field services in the VR program or whether it be the eligibility determination services at the DDS. Our overall administrative cost, as you can see, is 12.1% of our entire budget. So we'll start first with the disability determination services and what they do. If any of you are familiar with individuals who are receiving benefits through the Social Security Administration, the DDS, as we commonly refer them to as, we commonly refer to the disability determination as DDS. I'll get it spit out here correctly here in a minute. Makes those adjudications. As I said, the DDS is responsible for adjudicating cases for individuals in the state of Maryland who apply for either Social Security disability insurance, or commonly referred to as SSDI, and supplemental security income, which is commonly referred to as SSI. The adjudication of these cases is the primarily responsibility of the DDS claims examiner, who are responsible for reviewing the medical evidence that is presented to them from the claimant and comparing that medical information to SSA's policies and whether or not that individual meets the criteria necessary for either SSI or SSDI. DDS has 239 individuals that are located out in Hunt Valley. 123 of those individuals are DDS claims examiners. We have section supervisors and quality assurance individuals. One of the key components of the requirements of the DDS is that they maintain a certain quality of their determinations and accuracies in those determinations. If an agency falls below 92% accuracy rate, they are considered to be in failure. Right at the moment, the DDS accuracy rate is running around 96 to 97% accuracy. The remaining individuals are made up of medical professionals, such as physicians and psychologists and psychiatrists, as well as the support staff. In order to become a DDS examiner, you have to go through a 13-week intensive training program, because what you're looking at is every body system and understanding the effects that the disease or injury has on that individual, and how, again, it impacts their ability to work. Individuals can file for benefits in one of three ways. They can file for either SSDI only, SSI only, or a combination of the two. For those who are not familiar with exactly what SSDI and SSI are, we have a slide here that goes over that. The disability insurance piece of these benefits are for individuals who are under 65 and who've been working and have paid into the system through FICA withholdings, and you have earned enough credits to receive SSDI. SSI are for individuals who are either elderly, blind, or disabled and have very low incomes. The benefits range from $10 a month up to $400, even higher depending upon the individuals. Most individuals who qualify for SSI are also on the state's Medicaid program. So also there's what the definition is for being disabled, as also what we have up here is the definition for substantial gainful activities. These are really the two key components, and making a determination is whether or not somebody can medically work and maintain that level of work in order to make a sufficient amount of income over that period of time, over a 12-month period of time. Now, to kind of give you an idea of the types or the volume of claims, we have a chart here. Obviously, these are being reported by quarters, and from 20 and FY20, which is federal fiscal year 20, and for people's information, a federal fiscal year starts October 1 and runs through September 30th. In 2020, you can see was our low point. The reason for that is a lot of the DDS, a lot of the Social Security offices were closed, and so they weren't processing individuals through those offices as regularly as they were previously. But you can see in 21 and 22, those numbers have started to rebound with claims coming in. As far as adjudication of claims over time, again, our high water mark in this chart was in 18. We took a dip starting in 19, and then obviously 20, 21, and 22 we're processing about the same number of claims. Now, one of the reasons why our claims numbers have dropped is not due to the number of vacancies we have at the DDS. One of the things that SSA requires is an extensive security background check that takes a while to get through. It's you have basically 85-page questionnaire that you have to fill out to apply for this security background check. And as a result, we have been seeing an increased number of individuals, an increased number of vacancies over the year, starting in 21 and all the way up until May of 22, with a high of 48 vacancies there. Obviously, the number of vacancies that we have has created a backlog. Now, this backlog is not a Maryland-only issue. This is a national issue that has affected every DDS in the country. We have a chart here kind of showing our backlog as where it stands at this moment is 24,777. Pennsylvania's number and Virginia's numbers are there as well. The reason why I put Wisconsin in here is because Wisconsin is sort of my benchmark for not only for the DDS program, but also for the VR program, because they have a similar population as the state of Maryland. So as you can see, even their numbers are higher than ours with the same population. Now, one of the reasons, besides the security background check, is the fact that we have very low starting wages in the state of Maryland for these type of jobs. It became difficult to attract individuals as a result. We were finding that employees could earn $20,000 or $30,000 more than they were earning at DDS, and so we had people leaving. An example here.
Yes. Hi, it's Lillian.
Hi, Lillian.
Hi, Ms. Archer.
Okay.
Yes, hello. Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you, Mrs. Archer.
Yeah, someone keeps calling my name and I keep saying yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're good.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
So, for example, the DDS examiner who can leave the Maryland DDS and go work for the District of Columbia can earn $76,000. Okay, I'm sorry. Which is about $22,000 more a year than what they were earning in Maryland. What we did was, after briefing the superintendent on the issue, he directed both MSD senior staff, the Division of Rehabilitation Services, to do a salary study that took a look at what the salaries were around the state for comparable positions, take a look at what the salaries were at other DDSs around the country, and we presented that salary study to the Department of Budget and Management, which created a new salary structure for our claims examiner. So on July 1st of 2022, our starting salaries went from $42,000 up to $54,665. So we became a lot more competitive. Our most recent recruitment resulted in 170 applications. Our prior recruitment had about 29. Of those applicants, 69 individuals were determined selectable. We've already made 36 conditional offers to fill those vacancies. And the existing DDS examiner classification received, on average, a 20% increase in their salary. So we'll stop there and see if anybody's got any questions about the DDS. Yes, Jade.
I actually have a question not related to this. There are people indicating that the Google link is not working, but they need the Zoom link. Is there a way to send the Zoom link out to the membership? Great. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jade.
And I put a question in the chat. This is Ellen Caligari.
Okay.
How do you define the accuracy rate for DDS?
The accuracy rate is determined by Social Security. When they do, they randomly pull cases that have been cleared by the DDS, and then those are reviewed by an independent group. That's the Social Security Administration, and then based on those reviews, they will send back any case that has been cleared that they feel that there is an issue with that case for whatever reason. It could be not enough medical evidence, not applying a certain policy correctly. So those are the type of things that go into that accuracy rate. And that's how, like I said, it's done independently of the DDS.
Using the word independence, does that mean that these are individuals who are chosen by Social Security?
They're Social Security employees. They're quality review specialists at the Social Security Administration.
Do we have any other questions? If not, we are aware of the problem with the Zoom link, and we would like to take a short break so we could fix that problem. Thank you. So at this time, let's take a 5-minute break, and like I said, we have refreshments in the caucus room for you.
right, thank you, everyone. We did have one question when we kind of took a real quick break as a point of clarification. The DDS is 100% federally funded through the Social Security Administration. I apologize for missing that point. So they serve, they're considered what we call a reimbursable, which means the funds that the state of Maryland expend are then reimbursed back to the state of Maryland for those services and so forth. All right, moving on. The Division of Rehabilitation Services, the Vocational Rehabilitation Program. In reality, the Division of Rehabilitation Services has been in existence for well over 90 years as part of the Maryland State Department of Education. The VR federal program itself came into existence, has been in existence since the 1920s. Each state runs its own vocational rehabilitation program. In Maryland, obviously, the vocational rehabilitation is most commonly referred to as DORS. The Division of Rehabilitation Services was itself created in 1929 as the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services, or DVR at that time. Senate Bill 174 created the division within the Maryland State Department of Education. And at that time, we had a whopping $15,000 budget and 2 staff to cover an entire state. So obviously, things have changed over the year. Today's budget, when we consider all the funding that the division receives through its various programs, is $79 million. Thank you. 500,000. We have a staff of 3. The VR program has a staff of 390 pins and 46 contractual positions. The VR program is Title I of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 as amended. It was most recently authorized in 2014 under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act. We commonly refer to as WIOA. One of the things that WIOA or WIO required us to do is be a part of the state workforce plan, or what we call a combined state plan, which brings all the workforce agencies that are required under WIOA. It also requires the common performance measures for the 4 required programs. And the 4 required programs are the Dislocated Worker Program, which is housed at the Department of Labor, the Adult Basic Ed Program, which is also housed at the Department of Labor, and the Wagner-Preiser Program, which is housed at the Department of Labor. Each state determines its own structure for their VR program. The Act allows for 3 organizational structures within a state. Combined State Agency provides a VRA program, provides all services to all the disability group. There's a general program that provides VR services to all disability groups except those who are blind. And then there's the Blind Agency, which provides VR services to only those individuals who are blind. DORS is a combined agency. We have the Office of Field Services, which serves sort of in that general category. They serve all disability groups except the blind. We have the Office of Blindness and Vision Services, which provides services for the blind. And then we have the Workforce and Technology Center, which provides training and assessment services for the clients in the VR program. As I said, the VR program has approximately 436 individuals in total. We operate out of 23 field offices and the Workforce and Technology Center. Sure.
You know, as I was sitting here thinking about the programs and services that are provided, one of the things that I have had the pleasure to do is actually to go out to the Workforce and Technology Center, and it really made me miss being in the classroom again, because I saw phenomenal students and teachers doing phenomenal things. And I also had an opportunity to be the speaker for the graduation ceremony. So maybe we will take a field trip as a commission. You know, I would really love for you to see some of the programs and some of the activities.
So, one of the commission topics is how does DORS ensure stakeholder input into the programs and services that we provide? Well, the Rehab Act actually provides actually requires stakeholder input into the programs and services that the division provides. One of the primary roles and responsibility of our State Rehabilitation Council is to provide that feedback and input into our operations. This State Rehabilitation Council is a governor-appointed council. Each member can serve up to 2 3-year terms, must represent or be an individual with a disability, be a current or former client, or an employer. The council must meet at least 4 times a year. Currently, they're scheduled in February, May, September, and November. Their responsibility is reviewing the performance of the VR agency. The VR agency reviews policies and procedures and regulations and gets their input and recommendations before we implement a number of those policies and procedures. They collaborate with the VR program and our tri-annual comprehensive statewide needs assessment. That assessment was just completed. It took us about 9 months to complete that assessment. It involves stakeholders from the disability community, service providers, employers, as well as internal staff providing feedback. Our current statewide needs assessment, which went into effect on October 1st, is posted on our website. In addition to that, we conduct customer satisfaction surveys. We do this on a quarterly basis. The information that is gleaned from that feedback is shared with our State Rehabilitation Council as to where the issues are and why there may be an issue. In addition to that, DORS holds several public meetings that are advertised. We do it on our website. We do it through Facebook, emails, and text messages to clients, providers, and outside organizations. DORS reviews demographic data and compares that to the state's demographic data to determine areas of underserved. For example, right at the moment, DORS is currently working with several providers to increase our knowledge and presence in the Hispanic and Latino communities. Currently, DORS serves about 3.5% of everybody that we serve is considered Hispanic or Latino, whereas the population itself in the state of Maryland is between 10 and 11%. So this is an area that we are going to be focusing on over the next several months and years. In addition, DORS is partnering with Parents Place of Maryland to conduct listening sessions with parents and students concerning transition services and seeking to make sure the clarity of our information is clear to the students, to the parents, and to the school systems, so everybody knows and has an understanding of what those transitioning services are and how to receive services. So with that is how we are currently receiving stakeholder input. At this time, we'd welcome your thoughts and input into how we can improve our input. Rachel.
Am I on?
Yes.
Okay. You really can't see the lights. So the first thing that came to mind, Scott, is of course you have a position on my council, which is primarily people with developmental disabilities and their families, as you know. Certainly we leave time during every meeting for state agencies to provide updates and get information and input, and we could work together prior to any meeting so that we can prepare stuff for the council to be able to provide input on specific things.
Sure.
And also, as you know, as a member, we are also focusing on underserved populations, particularly those living in poverty who are Black or African American, Latino or Hispanic, and Asian American. So perhaps there's a way for us to partner in that going forward. But absolutely, the council is a great place for stakeholder input.
Thank you.
So I would also encourage use of the State Agency Transition Collaborative and ensuring that that information is going out to those representatives from the agency. And I don't know, I've got a question into my communications person. Does your communications person push that out to the communication representatives like at DDA, MDOD in a consistent, coordinated manner so that then it's going out across the partners? And then not to tag Eugene, but I know that Eugene has the contact point for all of the transition coordinators at the local level. And so looking at sort of what are some of the systems and networks that are out there and just making certain that they're all sort of looped in so that then when that information goes out, you guys aren't having to do all the lifting, you're just handing it off to the folks that then have those inroads.
No, appreciate that.
Yes, good. The other piece is, I know that you're partnering with us around specific listening sessions, but as a family-serving organization, I would just ditto what Rachel and Jade have said, as well as just that, like check, send it to these folks, this folks, this folks, this folks, because, we can definitely get it to families who have transition age youth and older.
Okay. Any other comments from the room? Because we have several people that have asked questions in the chat, so we'll move on to that now. So bear with us here a minute. Oh, no, there's one up there. Keep going up, keep going up. All right. Well, that's the customer satisfaction. Yeah. Ellen, I'm going to not that I want to I can take a guess, but I prefer, the question is, what is percentage of customers responding to the customer satisfaction survey? And I can get that information. I don't want to speak off the top of my head at the moment, even though I've got a figure in my head. I'd rather make sure of that. So we'll get that, and we'll make sure that we get that information put into the notes from today's meetings. Also, the percentage of individuals who participate in the listening sessions, it's not really a percentage, it's a number.
We keep them small, so they're around 10 to 12 per session.
Okay. Right. Let's see. Oh, okay. So is there any other feedback? Let's see, Ellen's got her hand up. So can we unmute her?
Thank you.
There we go. Okay.
So the other question is, I know because, representing individuals with disabilities, that often when they're asked how things are going, they will say fine, even if there are concerns. So I'm wondering, how do you get meaningful input from customers in a way that's accessible to them and comfortable to them? Because I know that in many cases, my clients will say fine because they want everybody to be happy and like them, and the people who are asking are in charge of services or, feel like they're important people in their lives. So how do you make that discussion more meaningful and accessible? That's my other question.
Okay, thanks. One of the things that we do is we sort of have a tiered response. We use Survey Gizmo, or Alchemer as they're now called, as our survey tool. And depending upon their response, there's at times a secondary and and a third level of questions that we can kind of dig a little bit, allows us to dig a little bit deeper into their specific response to try to glean whether or not there is something going on that maybe they may not have really responded to initially. So, I mean, that's how we try to get at that, and trying to really get some good feedback from our clients.
Hi, this is Laura McKenzie. I just had a question. So as a transition professional, naturally would coach families to, if they want to apply for DORS services, submitting that referral. And so maybe it would be helpful to then have a link, because the referral link is so accessible for a survey that it would naturally be a part of the conversation, that if you are pursuing DORS services but are having difficulty, here's this additional resource to be able to share with families to say, you know, this is understanding that DORS services is always trying to improve. And so here's a way that if you're having difficulty, that us as transition professionals can coach families that your input's always valuable, they're always trying to improve, and this is how that happens. And so it just a way to communicate that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Eugene?
Hi, good morning. Again, this is Eugene, the secondary transition lead from MSDE. One of the stakeholder inputs is at the school level, at the LEA level, we need to develop mechanisms where there's two-way communication from the DORS office to the LEA or the school, frequent two-way communication, because if a parent or a family connects with DORS or is referred to DORS without consent from the school, the family does it directly without the school involvement. The only way the school or the LEA would know is for a communication from the transition coordinator or the IEP chair, dare I say, to the DORS office. So hopefully we can build in some type of electronic digital mechanism where there is real-time communication, because the family may be receiving, let's say, pre-ET services from DORS, and also a way to track those services back, because ultimately still the school or the LEA is responsible for those services, even though they may be being conducted by DORS or a pre-ET or a service provider. So we need to build that communication so that the services are captured as well as the results, because my understanding is that at some point in time, DORS also has to provide a report back to the federal government on skill attainment. So hopefully our offices can work together to build out this communication mechanism.
Thank you, Gene. I think that's an excellent suggestion, and we certainly will take that into consideration. Thank you, Scott.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for your input. That is clearly very valuable, and we'll certainly take a look at a lot of this. All right. The other commission topic is number 9. How should Maryland be invested in doing a better, to provide better support for DORS job training programs? So what I'm going to do is provide you a financial overview of the Division of Rehabilitation Services. And by the time we're done, hopefully all of you are well versed in match, maintenance of effort, financial federal funding, and state funding. So here we go. Okay, the VR program is a mandatory federally funded program. Congress must fund the program each year. The VR program funding is increased by each year based on the Consumer Price Index. Funding for each state is determined by a federal funding formula, which is part of the Rehab Act. Some of the major components that go into that funding formula is the average state wage. Maryland ranks number 1 as the highest income, medium income in the country. Our level of poverty in the state, and the change in state population. The funding formula does not consider the number of individuals living in the state or the cost of living that is in that particular state. And again, we have one of the highest cost of living in the country. The funding formula was reviewed back in 2009 and 10 by the GAO, the Government Accounting Office, and to take a look at whether or not there was a better way, a more equitable way to distribute the VR funding based on other criteria than what I've just kind of gone over. They provided 2 different options, and unfortunately, none of the options were adopted. And both of the options that was recommended by the GAO looked at the number of individuals who were in the state that had disabilities and so forth. So it would have adjusted our funding at that time considerably had any of those recommendations been taken into consideration. The federal funds come with some strings, as they usually do, which means the state has to have a match for those federal funds. In order to retain our full allotment, there is the match requirement of federal funds is 78.7% to 21.3% of state match. This is commonly referred to as 80-20 because those figures are a little bit easier to remember than 78.7 and 21.3. There's also what is known as a maintenance of effort. This means the state must continue to maintain a certain level of funding as it has as in the previous fiscal year. To kind of see how the federal funding affects the state of Maryland, we can see Maryland has $6.2 million. We receive in our FY23 grant, we're going to receive $52 million. Wisconsin, like I said, is sort of the state I kind of benchmark with, has $5.9 million, yet they receive $70 million. And then Missouri, 6.1, another state that I benchmark against, $80 million. So you can see the federal funding formula has a major effect on the federal funds that the state of Maryland receives as a result of our wealth as well as our moderate growth in population. This is going to be really a very important slide, so I'll want to make sure we go through this and make sure everybody has an understanding. In 21, we received $46.8 million. In 22, we received $48.6. In 23, we're expected to receive $52 million. Under state match, that is the requirement. So in order to meet our 22 state match, we needed $13.1 million to meet our state match. Maryland the VR program has been basically fat funded for a number of years. The only increases in our funding has basically been tied to our salaries, and if there's been any increase in salaries. If you go back to that 80-20, that's how our salaries are sort of split. 80% federal, 20% state funding. So there is very small increments of increase in our state funding because it's mainly, those increases are mainly tied to that state portion of the salaries. If we take a look and deduct all the other match requirements for a number of those other programs, we're left with $14.6 million. In 2022, we'll have a surplus. Other means the state is providing us more money than what we need to meet the minimum number, the minimum match requirement. So we have a surplus of $1.4 million. In 23, we'll have a surplus, provided we spend every single dime of our state appropriation. We'll have a surplus of a little over $500,000. 2024, our federal grant is expected to go because, again, it increases by CPI. And if any of you have been tracking what Social Security benefits may look like for those people who are in retirement. They're projected to have an increase, the largest increase in Social Security of anywhere between 8.5 and 8.7%. So if we apply that to these figures as the cost of living and cost of increase in inflation, we're projecting that our grant is going to go from 52 million to up to 55.4. That'll put us in a deficit, which means we're going to lose federal funds because we don't have enough federal funds to meet our match requirement. We lose, for every dollar we fall below match, we lose $4 of federal funding. And if we kind of keep the scenario, since state, inflation just doesn't disappear overnight, we will eventually start losing a significant amount of money. In 2025, which is really not that far away, we just submitted our 2024 budget. 2025, we start working on shortly after the beginning of the new calendar year. We project we're going to probably fall short about $1.3 million, which will impact our funding by $5 million. And it continues to increase. So by 2027, if we don't see an increase in our state funding, we could be losing up to $12.7 million in federal funds. Rachel.
Given the projection that you're making of federal funds and your forecasted grant amounts, which I know we don't know yet.
Yeah.
We don't even have our FY23 federal funds, and
Well-
what are we 6 days in? And you know the state match requirement, and you've done your 24 budget, because we have as well, the state one. Is it, I don't want to assume anything. Did you make a request to the governor to include the entire state match in the state budget?
Well, remember, we started doing budgets back in early, yeah.
I know,
So
but you know what the 80-20 is.
we know what the 80-20 is. The biggest question is what the CPI is going to do. And again, this is just a projection because, again, the funding formula could, in fact, reduce this amount.
For budget advocacy purposes, let me maybe phrase it a different way. Even though it's a guess, do you increase your request for state funding by a certain amount every year in an attempt to meet that match?
Well, we've been overmatched for all these years, okay? So we've been overmatched for years. And so we have not had an additional, like I said, we haven't had an additional investment by the state into the major investment in the state, by the state, into the program in a number of years. And we'll get to that piece in a little bit. However, I mean, so we've put in what we think we're going to need. Obviously, there's a certain point that goes out of our hands,
Of course.
and so forth. So, but this is something that obviously is on our radar, and so we'll be making an earnest attempt to get that funding and make sure that people are aware that, hey, if we don't keep up with the increases, then we're going to have problems. That's going to dramatically affect this program going forward, and so forth. Okay, we've also have a couple of questions. Well, the loss of federal funds, that is, and the question is, the loss of $3.8 million in federal funding per year or over several years, that would be in a single year, because that's based on your grant for that particular year. They have to, we have to match each and every year. Now, we do have carryover funds. We carried over funds from fiscal 22 into state, from federal fiscal 22 into state, federal fiscal 23. So there is some padding there and so forth. Also because there is a difference between the state fiscal year, which is July 1 through June 30th. There is a little bit of padding there in what we term as sort of that 3-month mini year. So we have a little bit of flexibility when it comes to 2024 in the event that the request doesn't go through at what we hope. We have a little bit of, we've got a little bit of wiggle room. However, after that, we've lost any type of wiggle room going forward. So, we'll have to have a big push come 2025 and beyond. Okay. So, can funds carry it over from one year to next? Yes, as long as we meet match, we're allowed to carry over funds from one year to the next. That's the reason why this is really important that the state continue to meet its match efforts. When we talk about, earlier on, when you talked about maintenance of effort, well, because we were overmatched, that was our maintenance of effort. So as the grant requirements go up, it basically, for this year, our match and maintenance of efforts were exactly the same. And so those two will go basically lockstep with one another. The advantages of having our maintenance of effort above our match requirement, it allows us, if we have the ability, to go out and get additional federal funds with that difference between the match amount and the maintenance of effort amount. But because of the amount of federal funds that we've been carrying over, mainly the result of COVID, we didn't go out and get any more money because in some cases, if you ask for more money and then don't spend it, you've got to spend a lot of time explaining why you didn't spend it. And so it becomes, well, we're just going to go with what we have. And so it is sort of a guessing game and so forth.
Can I ask a question? I mean, so the dollars, of course, are important, but is there a way to sort of understand from an individual served perspective what that impact would be, given that, we haven't served every potentially eligible individual since 1990. We've, as a result of order of selection, our categories have been shut down. I mean, are we looking at a full shutdown of every category and no one getting services at that point? Like, what would be the implications from a individual service perspective?
Right. I mean, if we get into where we're losing $5, $6, $7, $8 million a year in funding, remember, our cost of living are going to go up. Whether it be salaries, fees we pay to providers, college tuition for those kids we pay, they all go up. And so unless our grant is keeping pace with that growth in cost, we're going to have a problem in being able to deliver services at some point in time. It's also going to be impacting our ability to retain staff.
I think that was an excellent question. And a little later in the presentation, we're going to share some information with the commission about some of the things that we have been doing to make sure that we address the needs of our clients throughout Maryland.
Okay. All right. So, we're going to move on. Okay. Yeah, so we've already kind of answered this question. So we'll move on to the next area. Employment, obviously, for the VR program is a goal for every individual who's receiving VR services. That's why we're here. So we'll give you, again, a high-level overview of some things. As I said earlier on in the presentation, WIOA made some major changes to the vocational rehabilitation program nationally. It took the traditional VR program, which had a sole focus of employment, and broke it into two separate programs. The traditional, what I'll call the adult program, which is focused on training and employment, and it introduced a second program called Pre-Employment Transitioning Services for students with disabilities. It required us to set aside 15% of our federal funds to conduct that work. One of the other things that the Act did was change what is considered a successful outcome. And under the previous authorization, an individual could be employed for 90 days and we could close their case as successful. Under WIOA, they changed that to, and under WIA, under the previous authorization, we could provide services up to that 90 days and then we could close their case. Under WIOA, it changed that and it introduced a term called stability. Stability means that an individual has to be either A, not receiving DORS services while they're employed, or they've transitioned to long-term job supports, either through BHA or DDA. Once that person has reached what they call a stability, they have to be stable for 90 days. In other words, they're not receiving intensive VR services, they're not receiving services from DORS, they can be receiving services through BHA or DDA, or they could be on what they call natural job supports. Once they've been in that stability for 90 days, then we can close the case. What this has resulted in is people being basically employed for longer periods of time because we continue to provide services. We've gone from having people close their case within 90 to 100 days under the old system to really almost going a year before we close their case. So it is really changed how we provide services for the vocational program. The other big change has to do with our performance measures. The gold standard for the VR program up until 2014 was that 90-day rehab closure. That was the standard that everybody worked towards and so forth. The new standards don't even focus on that any longer. While, don't get me wrong, it is very, very important because that's why we're here. The federal standards have changed. We now look at a number of after-exit indicators. Second quarter after exit. That means we've closed their case. Fourth quarter wages after they have exited our program. Median earnings and credential attainments. All that focuses on is really training and career pathways, which is really what they want for individuals with disabilities. They're looking for long-term, stable employment. They also introduced, to reinforce that, what is known as measurable skills gains. How many people are getting training that leads to a skill advancement in that individual, whether it be they've completed college, they've completed a semester of school, they've attained a certification of some sort. That all goes towards having a measurable skill gains. And they've also introduced a new measure for all the programs called engagement with employers.
Scott, can I ask a couple of clarifying questions?
If I apologize. If we could just hold our questions to the end of the section, or we have questions, that way we'll make sure we continue through. But certainly we will get to those. I just noticed how excited Scott got when he started talking about funding, so I think I better, slow Scott down a little bit so we can get through the presentation.
Okay, so let's, so who are the constituents that are receiving DORS services? So, all right, this is our data from 2017 through 2021. And again, let me just interject here. One of the things that WIO did was change our performance periods. They are now called performance years, and the performance years are basically begin July 1 through June 30th, and the year is the year that that program year started. So we just started program year 2022, which began on July 1st. So this is actually fairly current data at this point in time. So our biggest population is those individuals with cognitive disabilities, followed by those with other mental disabilities, as well as psychosocial individuals. Here's the age range of individuals that we're currently serving. The highest majority of individuals are in that age group of 25 to 24. And again, this slide indicates those people that are receiving VR services. What this slide does not indicate are those individuals who are receiving pre-employment. If we were to add that in there, our highest age group would actually be in the age range between 16 and 24. Basically that transitioning group. Okay, next slide. Clients served by ethnicity. Our highest group is African American, followed by white, then followed by Latino and more race. Okay, next slide. So let's kind of get into how does the VR process start. And so we do have an online referral that went live during the pandemic. Prior to that, we had a paper referral, so anybody realizing that paper takes time, it means duplicate data entry and so forth. So we went to an online referral form. We have found that to be vastly improving the speed in which we can get people their information and begin processing their application for services. The online referral can be filled out by the individual themselves, a parent, guardian, or family member, a community provider, school personnel, or medical professional social worker. Once we receive the online referral information, we mail out the application packet within 1 to 2 business days. It includes the application, the instructions for filling that out, as well as the need for current medical records, and as well as we make sure we provide them a prepaid business envelope so we can get the information back. Again, the VR program is an eligibility program, not an entitlement program, so we do have criteria that people have to meet, regardless of their age. Once a consumer's application is received, we assign that application to our eligibility determination unit. This is a new unit that we just created. It is something that kind of is an outgrowth of the pandemic. We had we had VR counselors at the Workforce and Technology Center at the time, because clients weren't coming in. We utilized their skills to help in the eligibility process and gathering this information. Once we came out of the pandemic, we're back in the offices. The feedback from the field was that really helped us out, so we formulated an eligibility unit to focus in on just that aspect of it. The process is obviously time-consuming, and so we have found that moving that to that unit has really been beneficial. And so, as we said, we have to make a medical determination whether somebody is eligible for services. If the individual has current medical information, then it makes the process go very fast in determining whether they're eligible for services. If there's no current medical information available, we will make and pay for the evaluation, whether it be a fiscal or a psychological evaluation. There is a federal standard that is involved, and that is we have to make a eligibility determination within 60 days, and currently we are below that standard of around 37 days to make that determination. The other part is we have pre-employment transitioning students coming in. A student with a disability is applying for pre-employment services as a much lower benchmark. Again, this is more closer to an entitlement program than the VR program is itself. Student needs to be between the ages of 14 but less than 22. Key here is they have to be in school or enrolled in school. We can use something as simple as an IEP, a 504 plan, or a doctor's note. We're currently partnering with the University of Maryland Center for Transitioning and Career Innovation to assist us in some of that processing. So I believe we have Dr. Christy Stewart, who is helping us with that, and I'm going to have her speak a little bit about what they are doing for us.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
If you could hold 1 second, please, Ms. Stewart. When I spoke of a little while earlier, and I said that some things have already been put into place that we are implementing so that we can make sure that we assist more clients throughout the state. This is one of those programs.
Okay, Christy, if you could speak up.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me, Scott. Just wanted to give everybody a little update about our new pre-ETS intake unit at the Center for Transition and Career Innovation. We have a fully operating unit. As of now, we started literally a month ago today, and we have 5 new full-time staff. We have a supervisor who's overseeing the day-to-day operations and 4 intake specialists that are covering the incoming pre-ETS, potentially eligible for pre-ETS referrals all across the state. And we also have a part-time research assistant, to support the project as well as some of the data collection. And I think Scott mentioned this a little earlier, but our role really as the intake unit is to really support the DORS staff in processing those incoming potentially eligible students for pre-ETS. Some of the things that we do, we're initiating the contact when we get the referrals with the students and families, and sometimes with schools. We're scheduling the intake meetings, and we're gathering those required documents as well as signatures that support the recommendation for the pre-ETS services. So once we've gotten those documents in place, we send those materials in a packet and a recommendation from what we've gathered back to the EDU for the final decision to determine the eligibility. But really the big goal of this intake unit is to identify some efficiencies along the way and in the process itself, because sometimes we get caught in the process. But we want it to result in closing and or decreasing that time gap between referral and recommendation for services. That's the hope. We are working really closely with DORS. We have weekly meetings with leadership. We're always trying to be communicating on our end with DORS to further refine this process and anticipate any real challenges. We've had a busy month. We're definitely getting our feet wet with this new unit, and we're doing great. We haven't anticipated any problems thus far, but I think we've had well over 350 referrals in this first month. So we're just moving ahead. So that's it.
Thank you, Christy. Really appreciate it.
Sure.
Yeah, I would just like to say that I am excited about the partnership with the university. This partnership will free up the counselors to actually provide more services at a faster rate to those individuals who need those services the most. And so I can't say enough about the efforts that went into developing this partnership, and I can't say enough about how the University of Maryland has embraced the whole concept and is really all in and dedicated to moving the process forward.
Thank you. The one thing about pre-employment transitioning services, again, as I indicated again, the threshold is much lower than that of the VR program, but also the pre-EPS program does not have a defined set of criteria in determining the eligibility or whether an individual qualifies. But with that said, part of what this whole project is about is to make sure that, once those referrals come in, we do make a very as rapid of a decision on their qualifications as possible so we can get them into those pre-employment transitioning services. Once an individual's been determined eligible and assigned to at least category one, has been assigned to category 1, the next step is the development of the individual plan for employment, or commonly referred to as the IPE. At this point, once the eligibility unit has made their determination, they'll hand it off to the field counselor who's now going to be handling that individual's individual plan for employment. The counselor will set up their appointment, begin the process of determining employment goals and objectives, identifying what training needs the individual might need to meet their employment goal. Also take a look at needs of assistive technology and other supports, while considering any barriers to employment that they may have. This process also identifies the responsibility of the individual associated with participating associated with the participation in the program. So, other words, there are such thing as what is the individual going to be doing? I mean, because again, we're holding hands with the individual and we're going to go marching down this path, so there's responsibilities on both sides. It also identifies what we call comparable benefits. There are other organizations that are going to be contributing to this. We talk about employment goals with somebody who's in BHA or DDA. Well, those organizations are going to have a part in this process and getting that individual into employment and supporting them while they're in employment. Now, if somebody is unsure about their employment goal, the VR counselor can certainly arrange for a online assessment or an in-person career assessment to help guide their discussions. Some of the stuff that they look at is labor market information. Obviously, we want the individual to be successful, and so one of the things we do inform the individual is, if they've got a goal, an employment goal, they do to sit down and say, okay, what's the likelihood you're going to have a job at the end of the day if we provide this training? And so, is the job market here in this state? The job market may be in another state. And so they'll have to kind of work through that. It's not uncommon for us to place individuals and have them go work in another state and so forth. So, again, the IPE is a dynamic. As people progress through the process, it is dynamic. It can be amended as we go through. Again, we can only provide those services that are on that IPE. If a new service is added, then we have to sign an amended IPE. And again, as I always mentioned, if there's a comparable benefit that needs to be included on that, we need to include it on that. For example, as it indicated, if DORS agrees to pay for half the tuition to go to college, and the other half is picked up by a Pell Grant or a scholarship, that's included on the IPE as well. The standard there is a federal standard for development of and signing of an IPE, of the original IPE, and that standard is 90 days. Currently, we're getting that task completed within 66 days. These are the services that are typically found on an IPE: vocational guidance and counseling, assessment services, credential training. This would be, GED, technical and vocational schools, apprenticeships, colleges, and universities are just some of the examples. Non-credited training, though, we also support, would be like work readiness, apprenticeship prep programs, work-based learning, and internships. We include job search, job development, job placement, and coaching. Assistive technology and maintenance and transportation, all these things are considered when developing the IPE.
So at this point, Jade, we would like to answer your questions and take a quick 5-minute break. We are about halfway through the presentation. We are going to be respectful of everyone's time, so, we will answer those questions. Certainly, if you have additional questions, we will give you an email that you can send those questions to. Jade, I know you had a couple questions. And believe me, I'm really excited about the commission and your involvement and the questions that you're asking. That is, I'm really excited about that. So thank you very much for that.
So Scott, I wanted to ask about that credential attainment. With that WIOA standard. It's my understanding that on the labor side of the house, that high school diploma is a really big sort of marker. And given that you have such a high population of individuals with cognitive disabilities, what are the potential implications or impact of that in terms of your ability to meet the federally required measures? I feel like that's a shortcoming on the federal side that we're having to figure out, but I'd like some feedback about that.
Sure, and if I start to stumble, Jody can jump in here a little bit. Well, there's two components here, so let me kind of take this, kind of address each one. The credential attainment measure itself is really an after-exit marker. Okay, so for there it is, they've exited the program. They could have gone into employment. They could have gotten some type of credential after they've left. So for us, that credential attainment piece of it is more of is a tracking type of thing. And so that in itself is a challenge, because we're having to try to keep track of where people are up to a year after they've advanced. There are a number of different scenarios that the Rehab Services Administration has laid out of what means credential attainment. It could be that they've received their high school diploma and then went to work, and so forth. So that one is a little bit tougher to kind of keep our hands wrapped around. The other piece of this, the measurable skills gains, if they're going through an exit with a certification of completion and not a degree, there are other ways to get that sort of measurable skill gain. Now, again, that has to, you're working with individuals. It's going to take, obviously, the training. Does that training have certain recognized milestones that they can meet that would be recognized by the industry that they're interested in going into? So there are ways for them to get measurable skills gains, while they're in training. And that's the reason why there is a big push. I mean, we're really pushing hard the training component of this for people, recognizing that that these are measures that we're going to be held accountable for. And not only that, but they're going to be measures that potentially, if we don't meet our standards, the state could be financially sanctioned, and so forth. So it's something that we're working for.
All right, at this time, let's take a 5-minute break. I hope you're enjoying the refreshments. Please help yourself. If we could hold to 5 minutes, I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I think we're ready to begin again.
Let's go back one slide. Okay. The next commission topic that we're going to cover now is how does DORS utilize public-private partnerships to assist the Division of Rehabilitation Services clients?
And I must admit, this is the part I get the most excited about.
First off, services don't happen in a vacuum when it comes to the Division of Rehabilitation Services. We partner with a lot of people. Kind of give you an idea, we have 225 cooperative agreements with our community rehab providers around the states. We have agreements with all the local workforce boards, as well as the local educational agencies. We also have state partnerships with Behavioral Health Administration, Developmental Disability Administration, the Department of Disabilities, Department of Labor, and of course internally with our Office of Early Intervention and Special Ed, just to name a few. In addition, we have colleges and universities. You've already heard from the University of Maryland. We partnership with Morgan University, Loyola, Community College of Baltimore County, as well as Warwick Community College. Employers, extremely important. We have a number of individuals who not only sit on our SRC, because we're required to have employers on there, but we also, through these employer engagements is one of the reasons why we were successful in getting a number of people jobs. As you can see, some of the biggest names in the industries, as well as some of the large corporations that are housed here in the state of Maryland. Mile One Group, Plaza Ford, Tate Ford, just to name a few, as well as Amazon, Sodexo, CVS, Starbucks, and Weiss Markets are just a few of those organizations. So next. So let me give you an idea of how one of these partnerships works. Currently, DORS has a partnership with Sephora and Community College of Baltimore County. Sephora's corporate mission is to have their workforce be representative of the community in which they are in, which includes individuals with disabilities. Sephora, about 2 years ago, reached out to the Workforce and Technology Center to help them find and train individuals to work in their warehouse in Harford County, individuals who had disabilities. The Workforce and Technology Center currently has a warehouse training program. We modified that program to meet Sephora's needs. And then we teamed up with Baltimore Community College of Baltimore County to provide the on-site training at Sephora. To date, we've had 8 training sessions up there. 17 individuals have been employed by Sephora, and 3 other individuals, because of the warehouse training, went to work at other warehouse locations. So those are just, again, a quick example of some of the public and private partnerships that DORS is currently working with. But we'd welcome, any input into what other partnerships, private, public, that we can engage that'll help our consumers get employment. So, if you all want to think on that a little bit, we welcome your input, and if you can just send it to it, we'll add it to our notes from today, and make sure everybody's aware of that.
Scott, this is Scott, thank you. This is Marlo Lemon from PPMD. I just had a thought about adding hospitals because I know Morgan State University and the University of Maryland, Baltimore County just have partnerships with, I believe it's St. Agnes, and I can't think of the other hospital, partnerships. So that might be, since both of them are already on, that might be a thought.
Yeah, we have a couple partnerships with through Project Search that do partner with some of the hospitals. I think down in Anne Arundel County.
Yeah, Anne Arundel, Worcester, Peninsula General, and then Anne Arundel Medical Center, and then also we're just in the process of updating the UMB and UMMC MOUs for Project Search. Yeah.
So, no, but appreciate that, Marlo. We'll add that.
And I was going to say, and we've actually kind of talked about this. This is Renee with Parents Place of Maryland, around the amazing driver education program at the WTC. But it's very limiting for families that don't live in an area or proximity to be able to go. So I think it would be really amazing if DORS could explore some public-private partnerships with other driving schools across the state, because transportation is a huge barrier, particularly in areas like Southern Maryland, the Shore, Western Maryland, that don't have easily accessed public transportation. So that would be fantastic.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you, Renee.
I mean, the other thing that I would ask is, it would be helpful to know if there was a process. So when we interact with employers, I mean, there's sort of, they hand off to, you know, your business services, but when we talk with employers, to be able to say, here are some options, and if you'd like to develop a training program or whatever. And so if you guys could put something together that might be helpful to be able to hand to employers, not just about the hiring, but about the potential for partnerships and training and so forth. And again, using that first point that we talked about, that distribution list, get it out. So then as we're interacting with employers who are like, I want to hire folks, being able to say, okay, if you're looking for candidates, you can contact DORS. But also, if you want something a little more involved, a training program or whatever, here are the other steps that DORS can provide as well. That I think would be really, really helpful to have.
Great idea. Thanks, Jade. Appreciate that. Okay, moving on. On to the pre-employment transitioning services. Again, you know, this allows students with disabilities to explore the world of work and their possible career paths as we move forward. All right, as I indicated earlier, the Workforce Innovation Opportunities Act required us to set aside 15% of our funding. Again, individuals who are 14 but less than 22 enrolled in school or post-secondary school. So it's not just high school. As long as they're under the age of 22 and they're in college, we can continue to provide pre-employment transitioning services. Also has disability, is eligible to receive, you know, the federal law, special education, individuals who have 504 or other medical documentation. We'll briefly go through the 5 required services under pre-employment. This is not VR. I want to make that clear. You cannot receive VR services under pre-employment transitioning services. You can receive pre-employment transitioning services under VR, just not the other way around. So the five required services are job exploration, counseling, and career guidance. These are some of the examples: student vocational interest inventories, labor market information, in-demand industries, non-traditional employment outcomes, and identify career pathways and interest. The other is work-based learning experience. This includes job shadowing, career mentorship, paid and non-paid internships, service learning, and volunteering, paid and non-paid work experiences, and workplace tours and field trips. Counseling on career employment for career counseling on opportunities for enrollment in transitioning or post-transitioning educational programs. I'll get it spit out here. So again, this is reviewing students' options to go into community college, universities, helping to develop a career pathway that requires training, trade schools or technical schools, the military, or, you know, any other some of the post-secondary programs that are involved with students with intellectual developmental disabilities. Next, workplace readiness. Again, these are the behaviors that, you know, really, you know, soft skills. That, you know, that's probably the easiest way to say it. You know, the social and interpersonal skills, independent living skills, financial literacy. We've heard a lot about that. Orientation and mobilities, how to use public transportation. Job seeking skills, understanding what the employer expectations are, and some of those other soft skills requirements. Finally, self-advocacies, you know, the ability to, you know, effectively communicate and negotiate, you know, their own wants and desires, and being able to, the self-determination, have the freedom to, to live their life and pursue the things that are an interest to them. So examples are self-awareness training, understanding one's disability and how to disclose it, recognizing and utilizing accommodation, knowing one's rights and responsibilities, and learning how to problem solve. In addition to that, they could also be involved in a peer mentoring program. So, kind of give you an idea quickly over who we're serving. Largest population is Black, African American, followed by white, followed by Hispanic and Asians. As with the one of the things I will point out here real quick, the Asian and the Hispanic and Asian students are participating in pre-ETs at a higher percentage than they are as in the VR program. Okay, the VR kind of distribution across the state, where are they being located, where are they coming from? If you look at the slide, you'll notice that they are coming from out of state. The VR program allows a state to serve anybody, whether they're in state or out of state. Again, whether they're pre-ETs and they meet the qualification of a student with a disability, they can receive services within the state. These are the services that have been provided. These are the numbers over the last 4 years. You'll notice that work-based learning experience is the highest. Maryland's had a history of a very strong work-based learning program, even prior to the passage of WIOA. In that case, a lot of that work-based learning was with transitioning students as well as adults. This is strictly for the pre-employment. And by gender, the programs that you participate, in all cases, the highest percentage of individuals we're serving currently are males. Questions?
Hello, Eugene again from MSDE. Can you go back 2 slides? And this is just to add on to my previous comment. Those services that are provided by through pre-ETs by either through DORS or through a contractor, how do those services get back to the school or the LEA to be annotated in the child's IEP or connected to their transition activities and their post-secondary goals? That's the mechanism that needs to be built out. So school levels, pardon me when I say school level, I'm just 90 days into this job, so I still consider myself, I'm coming from Baltimore City. That information is not being captured in IEPs, which is essential for schools in order to close that gap, because while they may be happening, there's no mechanism to capture that right now and for it to be reported out, because we can use pre-ETs services as a potential intervention, particularly those work readiness and soft skills in the areas where we're seeing significant disproportionality in terms of disciplinary removals, particularly in the middle grades early. So it's important that we get this information real time to schools.
Eugene, we do partner with the Division of Special Education with Ms. Marcella Franskowski, and I think the question that you asked will require us to go and to speak to her and to actually look into it rather than just try to answer your question right now. So if you could write that question down for me, I would be more than happy to provide you with that information. Thank you so much.
Yeah, if I could just add one thing about that, I thought of it earlier. It's really important that families understand that DORS can only be involved in the IEP process if the school has gotten written consent and if we're invited. So a lot of times we'll hear complaints, oh, you didn't come to the IEP meeting. We weren't invited. We didn't even know about it. We don't know that student even exists unless the school informs us. So it's all part of that same process that you're discussing.
Absolutely, which is also the part of why we need to figure out a way to share information and to get universal consent, and also provide mechanisms where schools can get a mechanism where we can obtain parental consent a lot easier than what we normally go through now.
Yes.
Now, before we move on, now, is there any other questions? That's sort of the high-level overview of the division and its programs, and the particular ones that we operate. Again, we're not going to get into the independent living program and deep dive into any of those. So, is there any other questions that we might have that we need to kind of address? Okay, want to ask Ellen?
Yeah, Ellen, I'm trying to unmute.
Oh, good.
There you go.
I can finally unmute. How are the LEAs trained in what DORS can and cannot do? Many times, and I put this in the chat, there's a misunderstanding that DORS won't get involved until the students are, a year or two from graduation. And that's not the case, as your materials suggest, and that's what the law says. So I want to support Eugene in everything that he said in terms of getting that information to the teams so that they can get the consent and that they really know what can be provided. And that's across the board. I mean, I've seen it in every jurisdiction and in non-public schools as well as public schools, although I will say generally the non-publics do a better job in terms of transitioning. So the question is, how does that information get out? What training does DORS do for the LEAs and for transition specialists? So thank you.
Thank you. That's a great question. So we have had in the past, this was probably pre-pandemic, we've done trainings where we've gone around, we've had statewide trainings with the LEAs and with DORS staff so they could kind of do a meet and greet, meet one another. And then we've also provided training to the LEA staff, the transition staff, so that they do know how to do the referrals and the IEP meetings and the signatures, all of those kind of logistics. We now have a new statewide transition specialist, Jessica Markham, and she has been meeting with schools and with different counties. We haven't had a statewide training, but she's been meeting kind of county by county and going through that training. Just like DORS has had a lot of turnover, the LEAs have had a lot of turnover. And I'm hearing that in some areas there's, maybe one transition specialist for the entire school or whatever. So there's just a lot of work. Yeah, I see a lot of heads nodding in the audience if you can't see that. So we are in the process, and the other thing we're in the process of doing is coming up with a template so that we can have an MOU between DORS, MSDE, and all of the local education agencies. And those processes will be spelled out in that MOU, which can then be shared with staff, especially new staff as they come on. They can see that process just written out step by step.
Thank you. I so appreciate the steps you all are taking as it relates to communication. Just keep in mind as we're getting the communication that even transition staff at the school system level, and as a former teacher and having two young men that are going through it now, it still sometimes is not reaching that family IEP meeting. And then since we're talking about underserved populations, thinking about making information accessible to all.
Right. No, that's a good point. Thank you.
We'll do one more with Ms. Ray.
I just have a very quick question. I noticed on that same slide that Eugene asked to go back to, and you don't have to go, that 400 students received pre-ET services at the Workforce Technology Center. Can you explain how that works? Are those students that have already left school? Are they leaving school for a period of time to go there, just process-wise?
Typically, that's summer programs. Yeah, a lot of the programs, in particular when you get into the work-based learnings, and a lot of the stuff is occurring during the summer type. Kids have been at school all day and trying to do stuff after school. I'm going to say historically is problematic. Not that it can't occur and it doesn't occur, but the highest percentage of participation really starts in June and goes through August. Okay. All right, if there are no other questions, we're going to move on to the next topic of discussion. It's order selection. I noticed a couple things in the chat about wait lists, and so we're going to get to all that at this point in time. Order selection obviously can affect a lot of people once we have to go through it. It is a federal law. If the state does not have the sufficient resources, meaning both financial and human capacity, to serve all individuals, eligible individuals, to provide the full range of vocational services. And again, that's the full range of services. Order selection means that the state has to establish the criteria by which all individuals are placed into a category based on severity of their disabilities. Criteria must indicate that the most significant individuals are served first. Maryland has been in order selection since the late 1980s. So, this is going to be our next topic. Should the eligibility criteria for the Division of Rehabilitation Services, programs and services be altered? So we're going to review what it is. Order selection process. Before the state can't just simply say we're going to go into order selection. Oops.
I went back too far.
Okay, where are we? Okay, we're at the process. Okay. The state has to submit a plan to the Rehabilitation Services Administration, which oversees the vocational rehabilitation program. The criteria is not based solely on the type of disability. The criteria is based on the significance of the individual's disability and their impact of the disability on their functional levels. It's up to the state's VR program to determine the number of criteria and how the state will use those to determine who receives services. So I'll give you a little bit of a national overview at this time. Okay, there are 78 VR agencies in the country, and you're going, wait a second, there's only 50 states, it's DC and the territories, doesn't equal. Remember, a state can have 2 VR agencies, so that's the reason why it doesn't all add up. There are 40 VR agencies that have no order selection, 38 agencies that have order selection. 18 agencies, VR agencies, have some categories closed. 20 who are in order selection do not have all their categories open. No VR agency in the country has all categories closed. 32 states, including Maryland, have 3 categories. 5 states have 4 categories, and 1 state has 5 categories. So we'll review those. We'll point out the 1 state that has 5 categories, Washington State. These are how they select their, determine where they place people on category 1 through 5. Again, typically in all states, category 1 is the most significant in that state, with the lowest number being the least significant. So on 4 categories, or like we said, there are 5 states that have 4 categories of services. These are how they determine each one of their categories. And so whether or not they require multiple services or whether they need VR services at all. So now on to Maryland's order selection. We've got 3. And again, that's where the vast majority of the states have or reside. So at this point, I'm going to kind of turn it over to Jody a little bit because she's better adept at this piece than I am. So.
Thanks, Scott. So I'm going to, before I talk about what's on the slide, I'm just going to review what the functional capacities are because we talk about them in the slide and they're not actually printed in the slide. So we look at 7 areas of functional capacities. So for each individual, we look at communication, mobility, self-care, self-direction, work tolerance, work skills, and interpersonal skills. And all of that is on the DORS website as well within our policy. But I just want to give you that as a context. So in Maryland, as Scott said, Category 1 is our individuals who we deem most significant disability. That means that they have a disability which seriously impacts 3 or more functional capacities. So of those 7 that I listed, at least 3 are impacted. I'll give a quick example. So if a consumer comes to us, they have a diagnosis of bipolar disorder, personality disorder, and they're recovering from substance abuse. That impacts, the 3 areas that impacts are their interpersonal skills, their self-care, and they also have limited work experience in this example because they haven't worked in the past 16 years as they've been kind of struggling. And then the second order of selection, Category 2, is for individuals with a significant disability. And again, this is someone who's willing and able to work and to fully participate in the program, and they have a disability which seriously affects 1 or more of their functional capacities. So that's the criteria, the difference between most significant and significant. Just as an example here, a consumer has progressively lost her hearing. So she was not born deaf. It's been over a matter of time. She was provided a hearing evaluation prior to meeting with DORS. She communicates verbally and does not know sign language. And she's requesting DORS to assist with hearing aids so that she can use them as an accommodation on the job. So that is someone that would be in the order of selection is Category 2. And then the final is Category 3, which is a non-severe disability. I can tell you I've been with DORS for 17 years, so we have never had this category open. This is, again, someone who's willing to, wants to work, but they have a disability which does not limit their ability to work. So the example provided here, and I think Scott has another example, is someone that has documentation that points to low back pain, but it's controlled. They take medications, you know, with rest it feels better. They have no other disability or functional limitation provided. Another example is a 17-year-old student, has a 9th grade reading and math level and documentation of ADHD, but they've never received counseling or had medications for that. Again, the documentation does not support that would be a significant or most significant disability. You want to give your?
Yeah. So, let me kind of give you sort of a real-life example of a situation, and I'm actually going to use a former DORS employee who's long since retired from the agency. He came to us when he was 18. He was out riding his motorcycle, broke his ankle, came to DORS at the time. There was no order selection, but needed a pair of orthotic boots. By the time he finished with DORS services, he had left with a 4-year degree that we had paid for and several advanced credentials. So to some degree, order selection really is, while you've got states out there that have all categories open, while we have states that have no category of services, order selection, you know, if you really read through the Rehabilitation Act, it is really designed for those people who have significant and most significant disabilities. So it is something that, while we do in fact have an order selection, is not necessarily a bad thing. If we sit there and say, when we talked earlier about money, where does the state really want to put their money? Do they want to put it into individuals who are the most significant and have a significant disability, or do they want to open it up to individuals who may have a minor disability but still get the full range of vocational rehab services that are allowed under the Act? We can't limit it. Once you've been determined eligible and we write that IPE, you are potentially eligible to receive all the services that can be offered under the VR program. So, DORS does have a waiting list. There are a number of factors of why we have a waiting list, and we'll go through them. For us, it's really 3 areas: funding, staffing levels, and workloads. Okay, as we mentioned earlier, the funding to the state of Maryland is, and to all state VR agencies, is predicated on the wealth of the state. is one of the factors. You know, Maryland's in the mid-2000s, Maryland began moving up that ladder, becoming more and more wealthy. As a result, in the mid-2000s, our funding from year to year, despite the fact there was a CPI index, was flat or it decreased from the previous fiscal year. This lasted about 3 to 4 years. By the end of federal fiscal year 2006, we were running out of our funding before we got to the end of the federal fiscal year. So in 2007, we began adjusting our spending. We shut down all non-essential spendings across the board. We began limiting new services added to existing IPEs. In June of 2007, we closed both categories 1 and 2. Prior to this, we had categories 1 and 2 open. In addition, we laid off and eliminated approximately 30 staff positions. In 2009, this was the last major funding that DORS received from the state. We received $2 million in additional state federal funding. Category 1 was fully reopened, with Category 2 open, but with a wait list. By 2012, funding was no longer an issue because we had received funding through the American Recovery and Investment Act, as well as funding through reallotment. Again, we got reallotment because our match was here and our maintenance effort was up here, and so we were able to get those additional funds. So, let's take a look a little bit about staffing levels. State fiscal year. We had 491 PIN positions in the VR program, from headquarters, Office of Field Service, Workforce and Technology Center, and the Office of Blindness and Vision Services. By 2023, we're down to 390 positions, with a loss across every single program area. In total, we have lost over 101 positions in the program. So this is and in particular, in our direct service areas, it's been fairly significant. In addition, we've been having a tough time recruiting salaries. Just like the DDS, our salaries were low compared to other jurisdictions. Our historically low salaries made it very difficult to attract and retain our existing VR counselors. DORS receiving smaller and smaller numbers of applications, and I'm going to say qualified individuals in those applications, regardless of geographic areas of the state. The majority of our seasoned VR counselors have master's degrees. This education and VR experiences makes them very attractive candidates to other organizations. This is a list of our historic vacancies since 2017. As you can see, the number of vacancies we were carrying continually grew through 2022. And again, I'm going to put you see the asterisk again. When the superintendent came, Superintendent Chaudhry came to MSDE, we met one-on-one, and we discussed this issue, not only the issue at the VR program, but the DDS program. The pay plan initiative was his number 1 priority for the division. We worked and we did a salary study for the DDS program as well as the VR program. And we really pushed extremely hard with the Department of Budget and Management. We were fortunate in the fact that the VR Counselor Series, and this covers both the counselors in the VR program as well as the claims examiners at the DDS, are all controlled by the Division of Rehabilitation Services. These are positions that are not found anywhere else in the state of Maryland. As a result, we were able to do a off-cycle salary plan adjustment. And so we were able to significantly raise the salaries of both the VR counselors and the DDS examiners as a result of this. We literally, Dr. Lawson and I literally were meeting almost every Friday with the superintendent, going over where we were, looking at the vacancies, looking at the wait list numbers, looking at the backload numbers, and trying to make sure that we were moving forward and what we could do to move forward in trying to address the issues and so forth. The other area that again, we have reviewed with the superintendent is our workload areas. As you can see, the national average, and we took a poll of VR agencies around the country, and the average caseload is between 85 and 100. Our current caseloads are averaging 137. My top 3 counselors are carrying 379, 332, and 264 cases. They are transitioning counselors. Currently, DORS, between the VR program and the pre-EDS program, we're carrying 16,920 cases. Year to date in 2022, we handled over 27,561 VR and pre-EDS cases. 2007, when I had 100 and more people, we were carrying 25,000. But we also had a wait list of 4,473. There was, again, for pre-EDS, there is no order of selection. On average, DORS is receiving about 265 referrals a week between the VR and the pre-EDS program. As you can see, our workload for pre-employment has grown throughout the years. So let's take a look at the national level. Totally, nationally, there's 9,723 individuals on the list. This is one time you don't want to be number one, but in Maryland, we're the number one. We're the highest state in the country with a wait list. Next. Now, just a real quick note, you'll notice that there is a little bit of a difference between the national number for us and this number. This is our current number. The national number lags behind in reporting. So that's the reason why there is a difference. So, based on a lot of the work and that has been done, again, with the help of the superintendent, we've been able to fill our vacant positions. And as a result, we're able to bring people off the wait list. So we have started in September to start reopening up Category 2 and start rolling people off. We will have 17 cleared by November, and we'll start on 18 in December.
Scott, can you kind of give the commission some information about how difficult it was to get people to even apply to the positions? But after Mr. Chaudhary became involved, that situation has turned around dramatically. I don't know if you have ever met Mr. Chaudhary, but I can tell you Mr. Chaudhary came in understanding the situation at DORS. Mr. Chaudhary is really involved in looking at the research and reading and studying, and he immediately began meeting with Scott, and he immediately said to me, you will also meet with Scott. So Scott and I have come to know each other very well over the past several months. But I can tell you that Mr. Chaudhary understood the problem, and he is not someone who will just look at a problem. His main focus has been to resolve the issue. So if I could get you to share a little bit about that, Scott.
Right. And again, like I said, we meet on a regular basis. He provides, we provide him with weekly updates as to where we stand on our performance metrics as we go through the 60-day, the 90-day, the wait list, the referrals. The superintendent is actively involved in what is going on at both DORS and at DDS. It's the first time probably in a number of years that a superintendent has taken such an active role in the management and how things are going and how things are progressing and so forth, and creating flexibility for us in some areas. Prime example is, again, we need to spend all our state money in order to meet our match. In previous years, we did not have the flexibility of moving some of our money from one expense to another. The superintendent has given us the permission to make sure that we get those state funds expended so we meet our match and our maintenance of effort. And so we've been granted an opportunity to be able to move expenses around, whereas in the past, we were not given that opportunity and so forth.
If I could just add real quick, and it'll answer a question and something that you brought up, Dr. Lawson. So when the salaries were raised, one of the examples, and I think it's going to be in a later slide, but I know we're in a time crunch, we would get 4 to 10 applications for a VR counselor position. And then when we raised it, very similar to DDS, we reposted those positions after their salary increases, and we would get 40 or more applications. And not only that, but the quality of the counselors that we're hiring is much higher. We would use a selection report, and we'd try to pick the top 3. We were having to go down to 5, 6, 7 to get people to accept the job and the salaries. Now we're hiring off the top 3 positions. So, and we know that there was a question on here, are you just assuming that that's why people are applying now? We're not. We're asking people what changed, because we're seeing a lot of people reapply that applied earlier in the year and then turned down the offer at the lower salary. And we also had 4 VR counselors that had recently resigned because they got a higher salary and some other benefits. They have returned, and we're really, really happy to have them back. So, yeah, there's definite, not just anecdotal evidence that this has made a big change, but actually significant data that shows its impact.
Okay. And I realize we're running short in time, so we're going to try to get through these. There are other state agencies that have obviously addressed wait lists, issues. Example, Arizona, that has the ability to flex their work based on their workload. Massachusetts, the state provided them $10 million. Maine General went through and did a significant analysis of policies and procedures to see what was chewing up the counselor's time, to see what could be eliminated, and that's something we've been doing as well. And Wisconsin was having a fiscal issue, mainly because they didn't quite understand where their money was going and how it was being managed, and so they created data analytics to help them manage that better. Next slide. Okay. So, the 91, okay. Some of the future, again, for sake of time, some of the future initiatives that we're currently working on. Currently, we're working on taking a look at specific job duties. And again, these are specific job duties with pre-employment transitioning services. There are certain job duties that cannot be delegated by the state agency. Some agencies, unfortunately, out there have delegated everything to other organizations. Some of those agencies have been told to go back and redo because there are specific job duties that cannot be delegated. So we're taking a look at those job duties that we can delegate out and trying to doing a time study of our current counselors to find out what they are doing. The goal is for us to develop a fee for service that we can then enter into arrangements with either a university or other nonprofits so we can able to offload some of this workload of the pre-employment. Because not only do we have dedicated transitioning counselors who only do pre-ats and some VR, but we also have almost every VR counselor carrying pre-employment. So if there's something we can offload on those, it allows us to also free up time to bring more individuals off that wait list. Okay, doing a deep dive, and about this time last fall, we entered into an agreement with San Diego State University to do a deep dive into our data. We basically downloaded 5 years worth of data to them, and they in the process of creating data analytic tools for us to look at the entire VR process as far as services are concerned, and to see where those services actually add value to the VR process. In addition, we're looking at assessing providers. Are the services that are being provided by those providers actually leading to competitive integrated employment situations? So these are some of the things that we're currently working on to continue to address the wait list.
All right, I know we are running a little bit over. I would like to thank Scott and Jody for coming today. I know that you may have additional questions, so I would like to give you the email address to my assistant. If you have questions that you did not get an opportunity to ask and you would like to have those questions answered, you can send an email to Ruth, R-U-T-H, .downs, D-O-W-N-S, at Maryland, and that's spelled out, .gov. Once again, that's Ruth.downs at Maryland.gov. Some of you have expressed an interest in becoming the chair of the commission, and we will be reaching out to individuals accordingly. And we have noted the dates for future meetings. If I will send that out. If you could look on the screen as I speak, October 26th from 1 to 3, November 17th from 10 to 12, and December the 8th from 1 to 3. And we will be sending out a reminder about the future meetings as well. You know, I cannot thank you enough for your participation today. I can tell you in all honesty that I have truly enjoyed this meeting. I guess it may be time to go back to work because this has been enjoyable. I do look forward to our future conversations. I thank you for taking the time out of your busy day. Thank you so very much.